Do you know what medieval soldiers ate? Their menu could make modern people gag. Forget romantic feasts of knights in shining armor. In a real war camp, the air reeked of sweat, rot, and unwashed bodies. Food wasn't pleasure, it was survival, and sometimes poison. Garlic wasn't a seasoning. It was a shield against the stench of comrades who hadn't bathed in years. Salted meat, rock hard, moldy, sometimes crawling with worms. Soldiers boiled it for hours, then chewed through the slimy, 'cause hunger didn't care. Some said the rot made them see demons and made them fight like them too. And bread, not soft, not safe. Black loaves were so hard they doubled as weapons. Some contained toxic fungus that drove men into violent hallucinations. Armies raged, stabbed, and sometimes killed each other over bread that made them insane. Garlic, the first line of defense in those dark nights, when men lay shoulder to shoulder on damp straw. They chewed on raw garlic. Not for flavor, there was no luxury of taste here, but as a shield. Its fierce, burning odor dulled their own sense of smell, masking the human stench around them. Some chroniclers even joked the garlic didn't just ward off disease, it kept the living dead from choking on their own disgust. And yet, this wasn't a joke for the soldiers. Many of them shared their sleeping space with comrades who hadn't touched water to their skin in years. Some had never truly bathed since birth. Imagine drifting off to sleep next to a man whose very pores smelled like rancid fat, whose hair had hardened into greasy ropes. Garlic was more than food, it was survival for the nose, and maybe even the soul. Salted meat, the toothbreaker when dawn came, and the camp stirred to life. The first meal was often nothing more than a strip of salted pork. But pork is a generous word. This meat had been prepared months, sometimes years. It wasn't juicy, and it wasn't tender. It was a rock-hard slab of preserved flesh, so tough that soldiers often had to boil it for hours before they could chew it. Even then, it sometimes shattered their teeth. Barrels of this meat sat under the open sky for seasons at a time. Rain soaked the wood, mold crawled along the edges, and rats gnawed holes through the lids. By the time it reached a soldier's hands, the meat was no longer fresh, it was a gamble. Some pieces were covered in green fuzz, others carried a sour smell that made the stomach twist. But hunger was louder than disgust. Soldiers ate it anyway. And something strange happened. They adapted. Their bodies became resistant. Their guts hardened. There are Tully's half history, half nightmare of soldiers chewing meat so rancid that they began to hallucinate. Some saw visions of demons marching beside them into battle. Others claimed the spoiled flesh made them stronger, more fearless, as if rot itself had infected their courage. Whether true or not, the idea stuck. Medieval warriors weren't just hardened by war, they were fermented by their food. The cheese that screamed and the drink that burned like fire while bread and salted meat broke their teeth. Another delicacy awaited the soldiers. Not the golden wheels we imagine today, but something that looked and smelled more like a biological experiment than food. Sheep cheese, the rotting companion. Most armies relied on sheep's milk cheese because it kept longer than fresh meat. But keeping was a relative term. These cheeses were often stored for months in wooden crates, carried through swamps, deserts, and frozen hills. They sat in wagons under the sun until their rinds cracked and oozed. By the time a soldier pried one open, the smell could empty a tent. It wasn't just sour, it was alive. Flies laid eggs in the soft edges. Worms tunneled through the creamy core. Some soldiers scraped them off, others didn't bother. They needed protein, and the wriggling creatures were protein too. There were even campfire jokes. If the cheese moves, it's still good. If it stops moving, it's poison. The taste: imagine sour milk mixed with wet leather and a hint of rot. It coated the tongue like rancid butter, and yet many soldiers loved it. Why? Because at least they could chew it without breaking their jaws. After days of gnawing on stone-like bread and meat hard as iron, a lump of soft, stinking cheese felt almost luxurious. Wine and spirits, liquid courage or liquid death. But nothing in a medieval soldier's rations carried more danger or more power than alcohol. Wine, mead, and distilled spirits were their water, their medicine, and their battlefield fuel. Rivers were often contaminated with waste and corpses. Drinking plain water was a gamble. A swig of strong wine could kill the germs or at least kill the man's fear of them. Alcohol served another purpose. It made warriors braver. After a few gulps, timid recruits became fearless. Chroniclers wrote of ragged foot soldiers charging enemy lines with wild screams, swinging swords like men possessed. Some claimed that a half-drunk army was deadlier than a sober one. But alcohol was a treacherous ally. 1 cup too many, and a soldier stumbled instead of fought. 2 cups, and his sword arm wavered. 3, and he might wake up robbed, beaten, or left behind. Worse still, counterfeit spirits circulated in camps, brews laced with poisonous herbs, or lead to make them stronger. Those unlucky enough to drink too much sometimes collapsed, foaming at the mouth long before the battle began. If it were you standing in that filthy camp, surrounded by the stench of sweat, smoke, and rotting food, which of these grim meals would you choose to fill your stomach? Tell us in the comments. And if you want more shocking stories from history's darkest days, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.